From training to performing, join our big league conversation. Welcome to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast with your host, Eric Cressey.
Hi, everyone. This is Eric Cressey, and welcome to the 8th episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. Got a really good guest today, and we're excited to get to it. This episode is brought to you by the good folks at Jaeger Sports. Jaeger Sports specializes in arm health, arm conditioning, and mental training for baseball athletes. Through a variety of products and training programs, they address more than just an athlete's physical needs and preparation. They also attack the mental side. Alan Jaeger is the founder of Jaeger Sports, and I've known him for close to a decade now, and he's one of the absolute best people I know in the game, and he's also one of the most influential people in the game today. Of course, they're most well known for J-bands, which you'll find countless pitchers from youth levels all the way up to the college and professional ranks using for their pre-throwing warm-ups and arm care programs. And, this is an implement that we use every single day with our athletes at Cressey Sports Performance and with our guys that are out on the field, on the road. However, Jaeger Sports really goes much beyond bands. They've spent time covering topics ranging from long toss to structuring your year-round throwing programs to mental training. In short, they're an incredible resource that any baseball player, coach, and parent should really check out. And with that in mind, if you head to jagersports.com and enter the coupon code CSP, you'll get 20% off on your order through this May 31st. Again, that's jagersports.com, Jaeger sports.com, and the coupon code is CSP. That'll get you 20% off on your order through May 31st. As an interesting aside, today's guest actually attended a Jaeger Sports baseball camp when he was in 8th grade. And as I hear on the podcast today, he actually continues to use these products very regularly himself and is still a close friend of Alan's. Our guest is a left-handed pitcher who was drafted by the Angels in the first round of the 2009 MLB draft out of Santa Monica, California. Not long thereafter, he was traded to the Diamondbacks in 2010, and he wound up making his major league debut in 2012. He was traded back to the Angels in the offseason of 2013 to 14 and wound up having Tommy John in 2014. After his return from that injury, he's established himself as a mainstay in the Angels rotation, and he's been a Cressey Sports Performance athlete since this past offseason. We're excited to welcome Tyler Skaggs. All right, welcome to the show, Tyler.
Hey, what's up, Eric? How you doing?
This is going to be a blast, man. I appreciate you doing it. So I need you to bring me up to speed. So you grew up in California, and one of the challenges I know that we typically face in California, similar to what we see in Florida and Texas, a lot of the other warm weather climates, are we get kind of like the baseball only kids that were year round. Was that you growing up, or were you a multi-sport guy?
No, actually, I was happy. I was a multi-sport guy. I
Nice.
played football, baseball, basketball in high school. Never took baseball seriously until I think I kind of grew into my body as a junior in high school, and I kind of realized that pitching was something that I enjoyed and I was good at it, and kind of hung up the cleats, hung up the basketball shoes, and kind of focused on pitching.
That's a big deal, man. I think that gets lost in the shuffle a lot in California. Sometimes the schedules don't even allow guys to be multi-sport athletes, and obviously there's a ton of research that supports the idea of it being really good for long-term development. So, give me a little feel. You mentioned basketball, you mentioned football. What do you feel like you gained from those? Like, what were the benefits for you of being exposed to different teams, different sports, as it related to kind of your baseball world?
First and foremost, just being athletic on all types of movements, especially basketball. You're constantly jumping up and down, running around the court, shooting, dribbling, which is, it's kind of a hard thing to do for most people. And then football, I played quarterback, so you got to study the playbook, you got to learn the plays, you got to read the defenses, and it was just one of those things where I was never had any time off. I was constantly doing some sports and constantly moving around, being active, and I think it helped me. One, as a quarterback, trying to be a leader, trying to lead men or at that time, kids in high school, to win football games, and that's a tough deal in high school. I took a lot of pride in that. And then basketball-wise, our team was actually really good. We went to the CIF championship. Our team was solid. And then baseball, I was actually one of the youngest guys on the team. I made the team as a freshman in high school, so I kind of saw how that all went, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. Now, Santa Monica High School, I have to assume that on the baseball side of things, you obviously saw some good talent, but I gotta assume there's some pretty good basketball and football players out there. Were you facing a lot of the big dogs that are
Um,
still playing professionally?
yeah, I mean, especially basketball wise, it's definitely a hotbed. I mean, we're playing schools like Westchester, Inglewood, who has very prestigious, Fairfax. I mean, I saw James Harden play in high school. I personally was riding the bench, so I
So
didn't get a chance to
you didn't get
play.
dunked on?
No, thank God. But I mean, you see a guy like that in high school, and he could have probably went to the NBA right out of high school. So that's what I thought. I mean, it was fun, a fun experience. And baseball wise, I mean, growing up in California, you play against guys like Nolan Arenado, guys that are in the big leagues right now. Christian Yelich hit a home run off me. He's a year younger than me in high school, and that was always a fun experience. And then growing up with like Lucas Giolito, Max Fried, Jack Flaherty, all the pitchers, and it's just a hotbed for baseball.
Crazy how much talent's there. And the thing that's interesting, you can look at like the track record of success, and the thing that blew me away about kind of your history is you were a big leaguer quick, right? You were an '09 high school draft, and you were in the big leagues in 2012. Like that doesn't happen very often. What do you think was the biggest kind of reason for that really quick ascent? What got you to the show so fast?
Well, number one is that I think my parents, they raised me the right way. They raised me as being kind of self sufficient. So once I got to the minor leagues, you see some high school kids that struggle the first few years because they're on their own, doing their own thing, and that's tough for a lot of kids. For me, luckily, I had a great support system, and then talent wise, it's just one of those things where I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, I was more talented, but I just went out there and I had a lot of fun. I was extremely talented. My curveball played at every level until I got to the big leagues, and then it was very humbling for me. Where I went to the big leagues, went down to AAA, dominated, and came back to the big leagues, struggled, and it's one of those things where once I finally got over the hump of kind of that AAA big league, it's been a lot of fun. I feel like a lot more relaxed out there. But 2012, it seems like such a long time ago.
Yeah, and what was the thing with the curveball, right? So I know that a lot of guys, they'll struggle going from college baseballs to pro balls, things like that. Was it the change in the contour of the ball, or was just that it played against hitters that weren't big league hitters a little bit better, and you had to learn how to throw it differently or in certain counts?
I think once I signed, I learned to throw it a little differently. I just started throwing it harder because I used to kind of just lob it in there. And then once I started realizing that I could throw it at 80 miles an hour, I could throw it at 74 miles an hour and it'd be the same thing. I really started taking off. And then once the changeup kind of became a factor, it really, really helped me.
Absolutely. So, fast forward a couple years, obviously after you were drafted, you were traded to the Diamondbacks, went to the show, traded back to the Angels and had Tommy John. So, give me a little feel for, what advice would you give to a younger player going through Tommy John, that full year of time off?
Number one, find a hobby because it's a lot of downtime. And number two, you got to be patient. Patience is a key. Really immerse yourself in your kind of routine and what you feel is going to help you come back healthier and stronger. And once you kind of have that routine, you kind of have that base for your everyday once you come back from Tommy John, because that routine should stay the exact same.
Absolutely. And what was your timeline on how long did it take you to come back and any hiccups along the way?
Yeah, actually, I did have a hiccup. I had the shoulder tendonitis with my bicep tendon, which seems to be pretty common these days with the kind of Tommy John guys. And it knocked me out for like 3 or 4 months extra. So it took me 18 months to get back into a game.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have it any other way. I think that adversity builds character, and it makes everything a lot more sweet once you finally do come back.
Absolutely. So, like, while on the topic of injuries, so last year you were having basically an all-star caliber season that effectively went south when you tried to pitch through a groin strain. Like, what were the big learning lessons, both physically, pitching wise, mechanically, that you kind of figured out over the course of last season?
Well, mechanically, you never realize how much you really use your legs. I mean, Of course, you focus on leg driving towards home plate, but once you feel like you can't push off, everything kind of goes haywire. So I've never realized that. I've always kind of had, different type of arm things where I've been kind of fatigued or sore or like shoulder, elbow. I never had any leg issues up until last year. So it was kind of a freak incident how it happened, kind of lifting weights after I pitched, which, I mean, me and you have talked about this. Definitely changed that this year. So, yeah, I mean, mechanics wise, just you never really learn how how much you use your legs. And now that I've kind of crossed that bridge, I feel like I know what I need to do now for my body to work.
And even beyond kind of like that stuff, we've talked a little bit about like what the early changes this year have been, right? So
Yeah.
you've got a new pitching coach, Doug White, who I know you guys have really kind of hit the ground running, and while you've typically been like a four seam curveball changeup guy, what's worked and what's hasn't, what's going into like changing that pitch selection over the course of time.
Well, I've been working on a slider. The
Yep.
slider is one of those things where actually, it's been tough for me to throw because I'm such a curveball heavy guy, and
Yeah.
my wrist is not used to, staying stiff and not kind of like getting over the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, I had to miss a spring training start because I was really working on the slider and just wasn't feeling good on my arm. So I'm kind of taking a step back on that, but it's been nice, man. We have so much information with the Rapsodo, the TrackMan, the Edgertronic cameras that. I kind of know exactly where to throw my pitches now, which the past few years I've just been kind of guessing, watching video, which is nice now to know that I can just throw, high fastballs and kind of bounce curveballs, and that's kind of my bread and butter. And the metrics say that those two pitches are above average.
Absolutely. And, there's an old Max Scherzer line from like, I think it was last offseason. He mentioned to some guys, he's like, before you learn two breaking balls, you've got to master one. Do you feel like that this is the kind of thing where, you understand now because you've learned how to shape that curveball differently, you've thrown it for so long that you understand how differentiated it is from the slider, or do they play off of one another in terms of how you throw them?
Well, I mean, I honestly thought I threw some in the last game that I threw. I'm actually throwing again tonight, so no sliders tonight. But I threw against the Cubs, and I struck out two guys on sliders, and I was excited. I went in there, we watched video, and the metrics and everything said that it wasn't a good slider. I was like, man, it really felt really good. So it's funny, like you feel good. The eye test makes it seem like you look good. The swing, they swing and miss, but ultimately, it's not the pitch you want to throw.
Absolutely.
So honestly, I mean, for me, just throw a hard curveball, throw a soft curveball, steal a strike with a soft curveball, then finish them with a hard curveball. It's honestly two different pitches with two different shapes. So
Absolutely. And so if we're talking about a 5-day rotation, give me a little feel for how you structure your throwing. So if day 0 is your start, what are you doing on days 1, 2, 3, and 4 before that next time through the rotation?
So day after start, day 1, I like keeping it mobile. I like throwing every day. I mean, I literally go 60 feet just to kind of like swing my arm around, nothing crazy. Do my cardio and then a full-on lift, which is my favorite day to lift because one, you're kind of breaking up all the soreness that you have, and you just you're feeling good about yourself. No matter if you have a good or bad start, you kind of flush that out of the way, and that's pretty much you're chilling after that. You're watching the game, and then day 2 is complete kind of like recovery rest day.
Okay.
Still get some running in, something light though, kind of spin the blood a little bit for 20 minutes. And then you're kind of relaxing, watching the game. Get some work on your arm or whatever you feel like you need. And then day 3 is my
Will you
most
throw it all
important day.
on day 2?
Oh yeah,
Or,
no,
yeah.
I'll throw. I'll probably go 90 feet, nice and easy.
Okay.
Nothing crazy.
Absolutely.
Day 3 is a long toss day for me because it's my bullpen day. It's the most important day. I'll probably go around like 175 feet, really trying to stretch it out. And then on the way in, pull down, really, work on the fastball changeup. And then bullpen wise, it depends how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling pretty fresh, I'll probably throw 30 pitches, 15 out of the windup, 15 out of the stretch. The last probably 10 out of the stretch, I'll pretend like I'm facing whoever is the next opponent. So say I'm facing the A's as my first start this year, so I'll throw a bullpen and I'll face the first, 2 or 3 guys acting like somebody's on first base. So because that's mostly when the most damage is done. You see a lot of guys go out of the windup for most of their bullpen, and it doesn't make sense. You need to go out of the stretch because that's the most important time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then day 4, what are you doing? Are you moving around a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'm basically just playing light catch, spinning some curveballs, making sure it's ready to go, and then I'll do some sprints, and then I kind of just straight bubble wrap myself, make sure I'm hanging out, not doing anything crazy, and then watching the team if we're facing them. If not, I'll go upstairs and watch video for an inning of the team that I'm going to face.
Absolutely. And what about like the actual day of a game? Give me you got a 7:05 start on the West Coast. What's the day look like for you?
So I like getting to the field early. I get there around like 1:30 just because I like hanging out and I like getting in the zone. I'm not that guy that's like, don't talk to me, but at the same time, I'm not as talkative on the day that I pitch. Once I put my headphones in, it's kind of game time. I go in the weight room wherever we're at and start stretching. Probably, I'd say 4:30.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get loose, hop on the elliptical treadmill for like 10 minutes, kind of get a sweat going. Do all my shoulder stuff, make sure my shoulder's ready to go. Kind of like the serratus, wall slides, the reverse 90-90s, all that stuff. And then I'll get in the trainer's room, get my arms stretched, get my legs stretched. I'm a big fan of putting on like icy hot, red hot. I just like doing that. It's just something I've always done.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go out there probably 6:25.
Mm-hmm.
I like getting out there early because the strength coach comes out there and runs me through a dynamic warm up, kind of like the warm up that you have.
Yep.
So you're kind of jumping around, feeling good. Play catch for I'd say 12 minutes.
Yeah.
At the
most.
Will
you stretch it out much, or how far out will you take it?
I go out there quick though. Like that's like I throw maybe 20 throws. I'm already at 90 feet, and then I'm kind of like lobbing it, and then once I'm feeling like I'm at the level where my arm's feeling pretty fresh, I'll fire one from as long as I can, kind of like a pull down style, and then I'll pull down, and then I'll come in. I'll have the catcher kneel down, squat down. I'll throw about 10 pitches. I'll probably throw like 5 fastballs. And then it kind of depends if I curveball or change. It's been good that day. So
absolutely. And so give me a little feel for, obviously you spent some time with the Angels, went to the Diamondbacks, came back to the Angels. So you've experienced multiple teams, and you've even experienced some regime changes within those teams. Give me a little feel, obviously you were drafted a decade ago. So how has the game changed in the past 10 years? And how has your experiences, kind of been different from organization to organization?
Well, when I originally got drafted, it was a lot more like this is the way we're doing it, and there's no other way around it. They weren't really into long toss. They would always make fun of me for doing the Jaeger bands. They're like, "That's so stupid. Why would you do that? It does nothing for you." And as the years have gone on, the long toss, I've continued to do long toss because I love it. I think my arm feels great when I do it. Continue to do the Jaeger bands. Continue to do like the reverse throws and the pitch shaping stuff. The past few years, that last year they kind of laughed at us, and now we have a new pitching coach, and he's all about it. So. It's just been interesting to see the kind of the way baseball has changed from 2009. I mean, 2009 to now is completely different. Everything's about all the metrics, all the analytics stuff, all the numbers. When I originally signed, it was like, hey, can you throw a fastball and curveball? That's all you need. You need 2 pitches. So now it's like completely different.
Now it's, can you throw a 3,500 RPM curveball and
exactly
a four seam up at 100?
this spring training, I've never heard more RPMs or your spin rate or your axis more than I've had in the past 2 weeks.
Well, it's funny too, because when Doug White got that job, sure enough, he texted me probably 3 days later. He's like, "Hey, I heard Mr. Skaggs came to see you. I'm really excited to talk to you." Like that never would have happened in 2010. It's like unheard of for a team to reach out to the private sector, anything like that. So I'm excited to see you guys work together.
Doug's been great, man. He's kind of way different than most pitching coaches I've had. Most pitching coaches are the salty old guy who's pitching the big leagues, and I did it this way. My arm never hurt, and it's just nice to kind of have that refreshing younger dude that is there, and he's willing to work, man. That's all I ask out of a pitching coach or any coach in general. If you're willing to work on your craft or help me work on my craft, that's all I can ask for.
That's awesome. And it's funny. I literally, you just jumped a few questions ahead of me, so I'm gonna throw it at you right now. In the process of being in multiple organizations, and even just going through a minor league, like you probably had 15 coaches in your pro career on the pitching side of things.
I've had a lot of coaches.
Yeah. So what are the characteristics of the ones that you really have jived well with, that have really helped you, and then what are the ones that in one way or another have kind of been a hindrance to your progress? I mean, we got a lot of coaches that are going to listen to this, so we'd love to hear.
Well, I'll start off with the hindrance because that's the most important. Pitching coach that think that one way rules it all. Mm-hmm. You need to pitch this way and this way only. You need to do this, and this, otherwise you're not going to be successful. Everybody's mechanics are different. Everybody's arms are different. Everybody throws different pitches.
Yeah.
You can try to mold yourself after any pitcher you want. You're always going to have your own little twist on things. So I had some coaches that, for me, like out of the windup, I always go old school. I go over my head, really methodical. And a lot of people try to change that because they said it was wasted energy. And I told them, I feel like that's a timing mechanism for me. And I've done it since I was 9 years old, and I don't want to change it. And I think it's worked for me so far. And the pitching coaches that I really do like, one, they're understanding. Every day you're not going to feel great. We're all human. Your arms are going to be hanging at times. You don't need to go out there and just throw. So the guys that understand that are first and foremost guys that are good coaches. Number two is everybody's mechanics are different, so you want to cater to the guy by looking at certain different things like his leg drive, or if he's dragging his toe, or if he's keeping his weight back over the rubber. And especially like when you get to the minor leagues and to the major leagues, watching video is huge. If you can watch a video with the pitching coach and he understands what you're looking for, and you guys kind of take notes together, and then as the season progresses, you can kind of take your own notes and he takes notes, and you guys can kind of confer with your notes together after while you're not watching it together, so you get better at watching video. Is huge. So I mean that's another thing. And then in-game pitching coach, a bad pitching coach would be in-game telling you all the mechanical things you're doing wrong. You're flying open, you're doing this, you're doing that, which is tough because then you start thinking too much out there, and you don't want to think, you want to compete.
Absolutely.
And the good pitching coaches will come over there and be like, "Hey, man, keep the ball down. Like, keep doing your thing. You're looking great. Blah blah blah." And just telling you small little things, not like you're flying open, you're keeping the ball up, you're giving up home runs, none of that stuff. Just, I wouldn't say positive reinforcements, but somebody who's going to be there to tell you one thing that you're doing wrong that he knows is going to help you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and actually in that same vein, so like I know when you came down in the fall and spent some time with us, you and Brian Kaplan, my business partner, hit it off pretty good. So
Cap's great.
So tell me why. So I have my feelings about why. I mean, Cap's the best I've ever seen, and I get to work with him on a daily basis, and I've seen him make changes with guys that are really, really pronounced. But I know you guys hit it off, and you talk quite a bit and text back and forth a lot. What was it that kind of resonated with you about the way that he approached things?
Well, number one, he didn't go out of his way to approach me. He waited for me to approach him, which is great. You never want a guy that's going to be like, "Hey, I can help you."
Yeah.
Because then you're going to be skeptical of it. You want to work your way into it.
Then you got 40,000 pitching coaches on Twitter who know exactly what you need.
Exactly, bro. So they're going to look at one video of you throwing 80%, like, "Oh, you need to do this, this, and this, and this," which is no, that's not what you need to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I basically, I sat in his office and we looked at certain pitches. Like I said, I feel like my curveball wasn't as good last year. He said, "Well, let's look at it." And he basically gave me two things. You got to get your glove up a little bit to kind of get the tilt on the ball. And the main thing for me is that my back leg, my knee, I need to keep it above my foot, if that makes sense. I wish I could video demonstrate it for you.
Instead of drifting towards first base, learn to stay back in your hip a little bit longer.
Yes,
for sure.
Yes. So, and that's the main thing, because if my leg is not drifting over towards first base and my heel's down the whole time, my direction is going straight towards home plate.
Exactly.
And that's the main thing for me personally. For everybody that might not be true, but for me, that's if that is going good for me, it's going to be a great day.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to what you've kind of been leading everyone who's listening to this towards, without actually coming right out to say it. If you look at the role of a pitching coach over the last 10 years, it's gone from being a pitching coach who just hands you the scouting report and tells you about hitter tendencies. It's gone to becoming a manager of pitchers, right? It's about physically, how do you feel today? Where is your hydration status? What does your hip feel like today? It's a way to kind of look at it from maybe a little more holistic approach, as opposed to just talking strategy and internal focus cues and things like that.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, every pitch coach doesn't need to be a biomechanicist. They know what they're doing out there. Either they've pitched before, or they know what they need to look for. It's more managing the pitcher, managing the personalities, managing a pitching staff, and say that the shit's hitting the fan in the fifth inning and it's the bases loaded, 1 out, and the guy comes out there and he tells a joke. Nothing crazy, hey, get out of this double play, man. Let's do this. And it just lightens the mood. This is one of those things where you need to know your pitcher, though. For some guys, that won't work. I personally don't know certain people, but if say Scherzer is the bases loaded, maybe a joke is not the greatest thing to say to him.
I'm guessing not.
I'm saying like Patrick Corbin, I know a joke would be just what he needs because I've played with him and I know him very well. So.
Absolutely. All right. So what we do as we kind of approach the end of this, we go lightning round.
Okay.
So what advice would you give to a teenage Tyler Skaggs?
Enjoy the ride, and work harder on your craft because at times I feel like I kind of relied on ability, not on actual like working hard.
Absolutely. And, I think building on that, right, I think, and a lot of times the answer is the same, although you might be different, is how does that advice change for minor league baseball, Tyler Skaggs, after the draft?
Minor league baseball, I would say focus a little more. Don't get so caught up in being free from your family for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another question, right? So you're a guy who still lives in California. You're close to home. When you first were drafted and you went back, did you kind of have that big fish in a small pond kind of a off-season challenge where it felt like you had to recalibrate who you spent time with and who was important in your life and all that, or was it the kind of thing where once you got to pro ball, it was smooth sailing and that didn't really become an issue?
No. I mean, honestly, the first few years when I came back every year, it was like I felt like I was back in high school or college. Like everybody's back home. You want to go to parties, you want to do all these certain things, and you got to realize that you're a professional, and somebody else is going to outwork you every day.
Yeah.
And you can't be skipping workouts, and you go play catch every day because your body is your business.
Yeah. Baseball moves on if you're not ready.
Exactly. There's always somebody new willing to come take your spot.
Yeah. All right. So I think this is one of those questions. If we ask 100 big leaguers, we get 50 answers of one and 50 answers of others. What's more important, stuff or command?
Me personally, I like command because you could have below average stuff, but if you can dot a gnat's butt, you're looking pretty good.
Right on. Put it this way though, do you feel like you get signed if it's not for that breaking ball?
No, and I'm left-handed, which I don't get signed if I'm a righty.
Yeah, so it's a challenging question. I'm not sure it's an easy one to answer.
I mean, honestly, high school I was like 89, 90. It wasn't like I was flame throwing. It wasn't like I was like amazing, but I was 6'5", about 165 pounds, and there's a lot of projection in my body.
With that curveball, was that something that you always could spin, or was it something like it took some fine tuning in high school when you were first learning it?
Honestly, I started even throwing it before high school, and I'm not saying that's the reason why you have Tommy John. It's just one of those things where if it happens, it happens.
Yep.
But a curveball is something that I've always been able to do, always been able to spin. I think it helps being a quarterback. You're throwing a football kind of in the same way. So I've really kind of took that into pitching.
You still like throwing the football in the off season?
Oh, I love it. I do it probably the first month. I throw the football around, then throw the baseball around.
Absolutely. And when you have teammates that come to you and ask you about your breaking ball, like what are the most common mistakes that they're making as they learn their curveball? What are the things you find yourself teaching over and over again?
Well, they're trying to really twist over the top of it instead of just keeping your wrist firm and just kind of like throwing it like a football. Like that's the best way I can describe it. You know, you don't throw a football with your hand straight, and you don't throw it twisting. You throw it with your hand cocked in that position, and your wrist is straight, and you're kind of breaking your wrist back and forth. You're not really spinning the ball. It's more coming off the top of your hand.
Absolutely. All right. So changing gears a little bit. Who's your favorite teammate of all time and why?
Wow, that's a tough question. Favorite teammate of all time?
I mean, any level, any sport, if you want to.
No. I'd probably say Patrick Corbin, just because. I mean, both left-handed pitchers. We got drafted together in 2009. We got traded together. We've done a lot of things together.
Absolutely. And what pitchers do you like to watch and why? Who do you look to, whether it's to actually learn or just because you enjoy watching them?
Well, I'm biased for lefties. I'm a lefty, so I love watching lefties. Of course, Kershaw. Of course, Corby, which is a guy that I play with a lot. Keuchel, just the way he keeps the ball down and makes everybody look foolish. Gio Gonzalez, I like the way he just attacks people. But honestly, Kershaw is probably my favorite, and we get to play him a bunch. We get to see him all the time. So for me, it's really enjoyable.
That's awesome. All right, so let's have a little bit of fun, right? You're on Instagram. You're a Twitter guy. Excuse me. What's the most hilarious thing someone's either said to you on social media or yelled at you from the stands?
Wow. So
We'll keep it PG.
Just after my first spring training start this year,
Yeah.
I gave up back-to-back home runs, and they were like no doubter lasers. And some guy tweeted me saying like, "Geez, Skaggs, there's family sitting in that outfield." And I just thought it was absolutely hysterical.
Well, and that's that leads to another good question. Is let's be honest. So like. I think I saw the other day that Scherzer had like an ERA of 6 in spring training. They were joking after DeGrom's first outing that he had like a 9 on the spring. Like, how much do spring training results really matter? For a guy who's more established like you are, or any of those guys for that matter.
They literally mean absolutely nothing.
Exactly.
As long as you feel good and you're going to go out there and you're going to throw pitches that you would never ever throw in certain counts in a major league game, because that's not what you would do.
Mm-hmm.
But the more you practice it, the better you're going to be. It's all about repetitions. So like tonight, I'm throwing against the Indians, and if like I say I have 2 strikes on somebody, maybe I wouldn't throw a curveball, throw a changeup instead to see how it feels.
Absolutely.
And the numbers mean nothing as long as you feel comfortable with certain pitches.
Yeah. The good news, this podcast won't run until April, so I'm not going to tip your hand to a bunch of Indians
it's
hitters.
all good. It's all good.
I might shoot a text over to Ryan Flaherty or something like that, but I won't do it. So, all right. So last little bit. So we got a bunch of probably middle school, high school, college players, minor league players, not that coaches, support staff, athletic trainers, strength coaches, things like that. If you've got one bit of wisdom to impart on the baseball world, what would it be?
Have fun, man. Like, I know we all get caught up in working hard and doing this and doing that, but baseball's fun. You're playing a kid's game, especially when you're in the minor leagues and the big leagues. You get in a kid's game, you're playing a kid's game for money. Yeah. It's never that serious. Remember, we used to have like Little League games, and at the end, you would go to a snack bar and all was forgotten. Like, you want to take that every game. Say you have a good game or bad game, you want to be the same person every day. That's the main thing for me. You never want to be that guy that has a great game and come in and you're on your high horse, or you have a shitty game and you come in, you don't talk to anybody. You need to be the same guy, because it's a long, long, long season. I mean, you're with the same guys for 7-8 months.
Yeah, don't get too down, but don't get too up too, right? So the game will humble you really quickly. So.
Very, very humbling.
That's awesome advice. So, listen, man, it's been awesome having you on. Obviously, getting to know you this offseason and seeing the hard work you put in behind the scenes. But I'm really excited that you got a chance to share this with some of our listeners. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thank you for having me, brother.
Folks can find you on Twitter, Tyler Skaggs 37, right?
Yes, sir.
That's the one. Awesome. I'll make sure to pass them that way in the show notes. Again, thanks for coming on, and look forward to seeing you do your thing this year.
Anytime, bro. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you'd consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review to read on iTunes. We welcome your suggestions for future guests and questions. Just email elitebaseballpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for your continued support, and we'll see you next episode.